January 15, 1901. Leavenworth, Kansas. A crowd of 5,000 gathers as the flames rise. The air is thick with the acrid smell of burning flesh. The crackling fire drowns out the screams of FredAlexander, a black man, bound and consumed by the flames. His fingers have been severed, his body tortured, and his name forever condemned by an accusation with no proof. The law did not defend him, justice did not save him, and the men who watched, cheered, and carried away his remains as trophies were never punished. At the dawn of the 20th century, America was gripped by racial terror. The Civil War had ended less than 40 years earlier, but in the South and Midwest, the promise of black freedom had collapsed under the weight of Jim Crow laws. In places like Kansas and Missouri, lynchings were not just acts of brutality. They were public spectacles meant to send a message. Black ambition, black independence, and even black existence were threats to white supremacy. Between 1880 and 1930, more than 4,000 African Americans were lynched in the United States. And on that cold winter night in 1901, FredAlexander became one of them. FredAlexander was a working-class black man in Leavenworth. He had served in the U.S. Army, a rare opportunity for African Americans at the time, and was known in his community. But in early 1901, when a white woman was found assaulted and murdered, whispers of suspicion turned to accusations. The mob wanted a black man to blame, and Alexander, despite a lack of evidence, became their target. He was arrested, but the legal process was only a formality. The outcome had already been decided. Local newspapers fanned the flames of racial hysteria, portraying Alexander as a monster before a trial could even be considered. The truth no longer mattered, only vengeance. On the night of January 15, 1901, a mob stormed the jail, dragging FredAlexander into the freezing air. The police made no effort to stop them. He was taken just outside the city limits, where a wooden stake had already been prepared. What followed was not just a killing, it was a ritual of terror. His fingers were cut from his hands, his body mutilated, and then in front of thousands of onlookers he was set ablaze. White families watched as his flesh burned away, as if it were a festival rather than a murder. This was the America of 1901, an America where a man could be accused, tortured, and executed without a trial. Simply because of the color of his skin. No arrests were made, no one was punished. The mob had acted with impunity, protected by a legal system that saw their actions as just. Across the country, black activists and journalists condemned the lynching, but in Leavenworth the white community moved on, as if nothing had happened. But history remembers. And today, more than a century later, FredAlexander's story stands as a testament to the horrors of racial violence in America. The lynching of FredAlexander was not an anomaly. It was part of a larger system of racial terror that shaped the America we live in today. The legacy of these crimes lives on, not just in history books, but in the inequalities of the justice system, in the fears of black families, and in the fight for truth and reconciliation. The past cannot be changed, but it can be remembered. It can be reckoned with, and it can serve as a warning, a reminder of what happens when justice is abandoned and hate is allowed to rule.